In 2016, I bought the Fujifilm X100T. This was my first Fujifilm camera, and it was the camera that really made me understand what made Fujifilm's approach special. They were onto something that I think even they didn't expect would explode to the popularity it has today. I've been testing the Fujifilm X100VI for the last couple of weeks, and one thing I will say right off the bat is that this camera has reminded me why I love photography in the first place. So in today's video, I want to talk about what makes this camera line so special, my overall experience with this camera, and should you wait potentially a year for yours or consider an alternative. This video is sponsored by MPB. We'll talk more about them later in the video. Right off the bat, it's clear that the X100VI is a beautiful camera. It's the kind of camera someone might ask you, is that a film camera? Which in itself is part of the experience of owning it. It's a great conversation starter. Beyond the aesthetics though, it's the intuitive and satisfying controls that have really set this camera line apart from other brands. And Fujifilm has now spent 13 years refining this design. You don't need to be a camera enthusiast to like shooting with the X100VI. And better yet, for beginners, I think it's a camera that encourages them to learn and explore all the basic camera settings and beyond. It's a gateway camera, the one that sparks the interest in photography and documenting everyday life. A big reason I think the X100V and now X100VI caught on so well is that they transcended their original target audience of people who already own a camera and want a second, smaller camera just for fun. Once TikTok found this camera, Fuji suddenly had people who were not typically interested in owning a dedicated camera finding the X100 series. It seems like on TikTok, it only took a few high view videos before it snowballed into the camera being sold out forever. Then there are Fuji's film simulations. For anyone who doesn't like editing, these provide an instant way to take advantage of amazing straight out of camera color. And for this new demographic of user who is coming from just owning a smartphone, this is a really good transition. So then, for the enthusiasts and professionals that want a compact daily camera, is it still worth waiting or paying a premium for this experience? If I could boil down two words that accurately describe the X100VI, it would be frictionless experience. This camera, more than possibly any that I have ever used, is trying to elicit joy in every moment. As someone who has to use a camera for work on a daily basis, the X100VI is like a breath of fresh air. It drops me into a different mindset than a camera I use for work, allowing me to feel completely present to my surroundings and taking photos when a good opportunity strikes. The tactile feeling of turning the aperture control on the lens, adjusting the exposure comp dial, or rotating the lever to flick on the built-in EVF all feel incredibly satisfying. Everything about this camera inspires me to want to use it. This thing has not left my side for the entire time I've had this loaner, and thanks to that, I have also caught more moments than I otherwise would with a different camera. The novelty of this design does come with some downsides. First of all, the autofocus on the X100VI has improved significantly from what I remember of my X100T, but there were still a lot of moments where it missed shots of both my cat and my son. These are two very difficult subjects, but my family is a big use case for this camera. In single point focus mode, I also found that the lens would do quite a bit of hunting, even in really bright environments. My point here is that despite the autofocus improvements, don't expect professional level autofocus accuracy out of this camera, especially if you are shooting something really quickly. Which brings me to my next point. The standout part of this system is how tiny the Fujinon 23mm f2 lens is. This lens still amazes me despite the design only barely changing over the years. Images are not too clinically sharp or too soft wide open, and having such a versatile field of view is great. I will note though that it didn't feel to me like this lens was truly taking advantage of this new 40.2 megapixel sensor. It didn't seem to be able to resolve the extra resolution to its fullest extent, but that is just my unscientific observation. At the same time, the resolution spec is never the reason why I have enjoyed images from this camera. Fuji also sent over their wide angle and telephoto adapter with my loaner, and I found myself using the telephoto a lot more than I expected. I really appreciate that both adapters are available because even though I don't think most people who own the X100 series will pick them up, for those who want that extra versatility, it's great. They are a bit slow and annoying to install, but if you only use them once in a while, it's probably still worth the effort. If you shoot backlit, the flare on this lens can be quite all-encompassing, but it will vary heavily depending on angle and how strong your light source is. To prevent this, picking up a lens hood is definitely recommended, and that will also allow you to add different kinds of filters to this 23mm while giving full weather sealing to the lens. As I was walking around taking photos with this camera, I also came to appreciate the leaf shutter a lot. I had forgotten how much quieter it is than other cameras that have a focal plane shutter. Listen to the difference between my X100VI and my Leica M10. When you are walking around on the street, that could easily be the difference between calling attention to yourself or not when snapping a quick photo. Because this camera has a leaf shutter, the shutter speed tops out at 1/4000. This can sometimes not be dark enough for daylight shooting, especially wide open at f2. This is why Fuji was almost required from the beginning to include a 4-stop built-in ND filter, which with the video upgrades to the X100VI, make it very compelling for me as a parent. In my mind, this has become the ultimate dad camera because I can shoot either film simulation video or high quality F-Log2 video outside without bringing a separate ND filter at a moment's notice. Capturing small life moments is the use case for the video in the X100VI, in my opinion. It is a shame that the microphone port is 2.5mm instead of 3.5mm, so you will need to use an adapter for most on-camera mics if you ever want higher quality audio. You probably won't use the video on this camera for anything professional unless social media is your job, but even then, this camera is supposed to be fun and not for work. I found the addition of IBIS to be nice considering that this camera is so small, so it's harder to maintain a steady shot for both stills and video versus a larger camera. In video, it's best not to try walking with IBIS on to get the best performance, and I was impressed by how slow the shutter speed could be when shooting handheld at night. When it comes to Fujifilm's film simulations, I've never actually experimented that much with playing with recipes for a dialed in-camera look because I always shoot raw and just edit the photos later. Admittedly, I didn't give enough credit to this process in camera because seeing a developed preview of shots beyond the base film simulation does add a layer of excitement and changes the way you see each shot as it's taken, which I think in turn also adds to the inspiration and creativity of your shoot day. There is also no denying the convenience of not having to edit the photos, so this is something I'm definitely going to embrace more on my other Fujifilm cameras going forward. A design issue I ran into only once during my loaner period, but I think would annoy me over time is the 1/4-20 on the bottom of the X100VI is slightly offset from the lens. This means every time you use an Arca Swiss plate for a tripod or those backpack clip-on holders for hands-free carry, you will be blocking the battery door, which prevents swapping batteries, and the SD card. If you only use the camera walking around, this is minor, but still an inconvenience. The X100VI is a rare case of a camera living up to hype, in my opinion. It does what it sets out to do, deliver a really fun experience for both casual people wanting to try out a dedicated camera and being a fun, carefree camera for the enthusiast and professional who just want to enjoy the craft wherever they go. Can you buy a camera that has better autofocus performance, has better image quality, or is better on multiple other specs for less money than the X100VI? Yes, but that would be missing the point of how good this experience is with all the collective design decisions Fuji has made. I enjoyed using this camera immensely, and because of that, I caught more moments than I would have with other cameras simply because I took it everywhere. There is almost no reason to not have it on you at all times in my mind. The popularity of the X100VI has definitely proved that large sensor fixed lens point and shoot cameras are a giant and growing segment of the camera market. We have recently even seen cameras be announced that are trying to capture some of these people from other brands. This camera is driving the market forward, forcing other brands to take this category seriously and consequently benefiting us consumers with more camera options in this category. The X100VI isn't perfect. It doesn't magically make you take great photos just because you own it, but I think if you're willing to wait for your order of this camera to finally come in, you won't be disappointed. However, if you've been on the fence about whether or not waiting for your X100VI order is worth it, you may want to consider the sponsor of today's video, MPB. MPB is the largest global platform to buy, sell, and trade used photography and videography gear. I'm really glad they are sponsoring today's video because if you go to their platform right now, you have the option to pick up many great alternatives to the X100 VI. We have my original Fujifilm camera, the X100T, which is available, as well as the Fujifilm X Pro 1 and 2, which are a great alternative and similar experience to the X100 VI with the option to change lenses. They even have the relatively new Fujifilm X-S20, which has been out of stock brand new at many retailers, but you can buy it used on MPB. That is only a few of the solid alternatives with many more to choose from on their platform. MPB isn't a marketplace. They actually buy gear directly from people like you and me, and their team of product specialists evaluates every single item before reselling them. So you never have to question the quality of the products that you purchase. I am a huge advocate for used gear and have bought a lot of used gear over the years myself. However, I have experienced buying used gear online and running into quality issues with it once it arrived. I wish I had used MPB back then because they provide a 6-month warranty on all products that have been carefully inspected by their product specialists. So if you don't want to wait or you're looking for a great alternative to the X100 VI, you can check out MPB at the first link in the video description. Thank you to MPB for making this video possible, and thank you guys for watching and supporting this channel.